I'm Mark Golub, and in the news, a new proposal for a Jewish presence in Congress. You know, there are many groups of legislators in Congress bound together by common interests and common legislative goals, and they go by the name of caucuses. And there's a caucus for virtually every special interest, however narrow, you can think of. Most of which never receive media attention, so they're not typically known by the American public. And there are the more well-known caucuses, such as the Freedom Caucus. Other well-known caucuses often related to ethnicity. So there's the Congressional Black Caucus, the Congressional Hispanic Caucus. Also, there's the Native American Indian Caucus, the Lebanon Friendship Caucus, the Sudan Caucus, the Portuguese Caucus. Well, one group seems never to have their own caucus in Congress. American Jews have never had a Jewish caucus. And as far as one long-time leading Jewish figure on the American scene, it's high time that things change. Jack Rosen is the chairman of the American Jewish Congress. He's also a member of the Claims Conference on Jewish Material Claims against Germany. And he's the most successful real estate executive, a major philanthropist. And Jack Rosen joins us on our JBS phones now to talk about his idea of a Jewish caucus in Congress. Jack, it's so good to speak with you again here on JBS.
Well, thank you for having me. I think it's a critical time for the Jewish community to
is it. You're
speaking out and looking to see how we can stop this continued increase in anti-Semitism that we see all around us.
Okay. So, Jack, first begin by telling us why now? Why have you had this idea now that there should be a Jewish Congress in Congress? Why now?
Well, the Jewish leadership in Congress and in the administration over the years has done a remarkable job in playing a leading role in changing America for the positive and protecting and assisting the Jewish community and having us participate in this great country. But I think things are changing in Washington. The way that business is done is far different than it had been in the past, and we have to come to grips with that. And what fueled this for me was seeing that when Congresswoman Omar making her anti-Semitic remarks, that Congress couldn't take action that directly identified Omar as being the individual who was making those comments and instead watered down a resolution. And that came about because some other caucuses, Progressive Caucus and Black Caucus, weighed in and went to the leadership in the House and said, look, we want a resolution that criticizes all forms of hatred, not just anti-Semitism. And I realized then that this country has now got to the point where we can't get the Congress and the Democratic leadership to identify someone, in a leading, public position in America as a culprit in spurting out these anti-Semitic hate statements. Then this country is changing and going back 50 years. What I realized as a result of this watered down resolution was that it now takes numbers. It's about math down in Washington. Whoever has the most voters wins. Whoever has the most votes on the Republican or Democrat side wins. Whoever has the most followers on social media wins. And individuals by themselves don't get a seat at the table anymore. We saw that with the Freedom Caucus in the Republican Party. We're now seeing it with progressives in the Democratic Party. So, although there's approximately, I think it's 28 Jewish members in the House, each one of them, is an important figure. Each one of them has access. But when one of them walks in by themselves, they're one vote. One vote doesn't matter to the leadership. And when a caucus walks in with 30, 40, 50 votes, the leadership realizes it can't pass a resolution because it needs all of those 30 or 40 votes or 50 votes, whatever, whichever caucus comes in. So the Jewish community is, although we've got some of the leading congressmen in the country, in the Congress there, and I think there's 4 or 5 chairmen of very critical committees, but as one member, they couldn't make that difference. Had they had 28 members come in and say, we need a resolution that just focuses on anti-Semitism, they may have won that vote, and it didn't happen. So I think what we're looking at is, understanding that on issues that Jews can come together on that are critical, anti-Semitism, the security of Israel, by example, we need to be players in the game. If that game requires that you have 30, 40, 50 members that come together, then the caucus becomes an important strategy for us. And we've seen that recently on the Omar resolution. We saw it on a BDS vote. We see it now where it's hard to get a BDS resolution on the floor. And I think, we have to understand that looking forward, we're going to have to deal with numbers and the math works much better if you can come in and represent the voice of 28 rather than one.
Yes. By the way, as you describe it, there's nothing that you say that I hope everybody listening on JBS, watching you right now, gravitates to what you're saying and understands that it seems to me it would be wonderful to have a Jewish caucus in Congress because there are so many other ethnicities and interest groups that have one. I'm imagining, however, a problem, and I want to hear what your response is. The reality is that at the moment, not all of the Jewish members in Congress view Israel the same way, view anti-Semitism that way. There were Jewish senators who voted against a BDS bill, a bill that would, in effect, restrict funding of states that engaged in BDS. So to vote against it was to basically turn your back on the fight against BDS. So that there seems to be within other ethnic groups at the moment a stronger consensus within their own body, and that within the Jewish community, you and I understand there's enormous fracture and there's enormous discord among Jews, in many instances along party lines, in many instances over President Donald Trump. But even when it comes to Israel and supporting Netanyahu and supporting what is called a right-wing government or a left-wing government, there seems to be discord within the congressional membership, whether it's Dick Blumenthal on one side, whether it's Elliot Engel on another side. So I want to know how you've thought through the issue. If there could a Jewish caucus speak with one voice, as, for example, the Black Caucus very often does within the halls of Congress?
So you're right. Jews, have different positions on the various issues. It's sort of part of our DNA. But we differ on many things. But I think we can come together on the question of anti-Semitism, and we can come together on the question of the security of Israel, and find common ground most of the time on those issues. I'm not suggesting that we need to use a caucus on domestic policy issues, outside of, religious-related issues, anti-Semitism. We're going to differ on, taxes. We're going to differ on immigration. We're going to differ on a lot of issues. But we can, we tend to come together on the key critical issues that keep us, keep our standing in America as Jews, that keep our rights as Jews in America, that, maintain the security of Israel. You see that on the anti-Semitism vote, the resolution. No Jews voted against it on support for Israeli, for military support for Israel. You get 90-plus senators that support it. So we can come together on those key issues, and that's where it matters. We've done an awfully good job playing, in our role in Congress, and I don't think we need the caucus to, increase, our position, improve our position with regard to, most issues that come about on, on our domestic side. But on those two issues, we seem to be losing of late. We're losing on BDS. You pointed that out in the vote, and you see what's happening in growing BDS movement. We lost on this issue about a congresswoman. This is not just anybody, speaking out with anti-Semitic tropes. This is a congresswoman, one of the 500 most important people in the country, making public anti-Semitic statements and having two others, Tlaib and Ocasio-Cortez, support her.
Yep.
And we can come together as Jews on that, and we have to understand that, you need tools to battle back. So what had always happened was the tools were people had reasonable discussions, and they came to some compromise. Well, we don't see that in Washington. So let's use the tools we have. We've got 28 members, and where we can come together on those kinds of issues, let's go in and make sure our voice is heard. Where we can't come together, mostly on domestic things,
right,
we'll be fine. We're all Americans,
Okay. What you're suggesting is, and you tell me if I've got it wrong, what you're suggesting is a caucus tends to meet first with themselves, among themselves, and the caucus arrives at a position. And there's a certain expectation that members of a given caucus will represent the will of that caucus. And so if there is a Jewish congressperson who is not exactly in line, but they're part of the caucus, by being part of the caucus, they're likely to vote with the other members of the caucus, whereas if there were no caucus, they might vote in a different way. Is that what you're basically saying?
I'm basically saying that, but keep in mind, the decision of a caucus rarely comes down to a question of the vote. It's a bargaining tool, and you use it as a bargaining chip, and it's not about every member of the caucus voting one way or another. You never get to that point, usually. I mean, one of the other benefits of a caucus is to be able to bridge gaps, and it's a tool by which you can come together and negotiate your position with other caucuses.
Yes.
Okay, so if the Black Caucus wanted a resolution that included everyone, and the Jewish caucus wanted a resolution that identified anti-Semitism as the problem, they would have found a compromise most likely. Maybe two different resolutions might have been a compromise. But you need some tools to be able to sit down with the other parties and negotiate. And one individual can't really negotiate with a caucus of 50 people. So it has that opportunity to bridge these gaps.
Well,
I don't think we usually get to the vote.
I understand, and I hope you're right. And again, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't want a Jewish caucus. I am not as optimistic as you are that if there were a Jewish caucus, it would have a Jewish influence in Congress, or that members of Congress who are Jewish now would vote differently because they're in a caucus. Yeah, but I understand.
I'm not saying they'll vote differently, and I don't think I'm not talking about influencing. I don't think we need to influence. We're pretty good at it, playing a role in influencing because the members are just terrific, Jewish members, and have always been leaders. But when you engage in a debate, you need to make sure that you get on the debating stage, and in Washington today, that's about how many members do you have that support one position or the other position.
Yes.
It's not about one person.
I also look. It is infuriating when anyone. It's both infuriating and tragic when anyone picks up a gun and goes into a synagogue or anywhere and shoots anyone, not only in a synagogue. It's horrible. And we've seen these kind of things in gay bars and black churches. And now the last two incidents have been in synagogues. It is both heartbreaking and it is it's outrageous. I don't know, Jack, if there's anything the Jewish community can do to stop crazy lunatics who just not only hate, but they feel violence is an appropriate way of expressing that hatred, any more than I know how we can stop crazy people from going into schools and shooting up children. And my other worry is that I'm now even more upset that there are members who've been elected to Congress, Jack, because once it's in Congress, it begins to be, even on the fringes, institutionalized. And that's when I want all the grown-ups in the room to just step on that kind of stuff as if it has no business. It's a bug. It should be stepped on like a bug. And what's upsetting me at the moment is I don't see the grown-ups in Congress, especially within the Democratic Party, which I have grown up with, Jack. I don't see the grown-ups stepping on these bugs. And my question for you is, when you say, yes, we as a Jewish community should be fighting against white supremacist violence on the right, and then this kind of vicious anti-Semitism that is veiled as anti-Zionism, but you and I understand what its origin is and what its goal is. I don't know what we do beyond pushing members of Congress in both sides of the aisle to come out against this as vocally and as vociferously as they can. And to this moment, Jack, it hasn't happened.
Well, look, I think there's been some remorse after that resolution. I mean,
I hope you're right.
We saw Senator Schumer and Speaker Pelosi go to AIPAC and speak out loud and clear in the leadership Democratic Party after that resolution. I think they understood how America felt. It's not only our community. 70% of Americans support Israel, and 90+% are comfortable with all religions, including Jews in America. So I think there was some remorse there, and I think they understood the problem. I've talked to some members of the Black Caucus and explained how we felt to them, and I'm not sure that they, really kind of had the sensitivity to how we would feel about that resolution. So the first thing we can do, you're right, we can't stop, terrorists maybe easily, but certainly not as individuals. But as individuals, we can demand that our leadership, which has a large megaphone in the country, speaks out against hate speech, speaks out against terror, against religions or anybody. And that we can command, that we have control over, that, our vote counts there. And so we should start there. And at least we can, hopefully, control this somewhat, and it doesn't continue to grow. Because I think if leading voices give any license to people to speak out and against other religions or to promote any kind of violence, if leading voices do that, more people are going to, crazy people come out of the closet.
Absolutely.
So let's talk to our leaders first, and let's make sure that they speak to Americans in the way they should.
By the way, have you had any discussions with Jewish members of Congress as to how they feel about the creation of a Jewish caucus?
Yes. So, most of the ones I spoke to support it. A few of them, want to think about it because there is, what they call an informal caucus. I mean, they do periodically meet, but it's, they don't use the caucus in the way others caucuses are used. So others, some of them have said, look, let me think about it. Nobody has said no to me yet. There's been some issue about whether Republicans want to, Jewish members want to join the Democratic Jewish members, but that's the politics of Washington. There's only 2 Republican Jewish members, so I don't think that means that this wouldn't work. But I've talked to them, and most of them understand it, support it. Whether they take the action and get it done, quickly, I don't know. It'll happen. It just may take a little time.
I want to ask you about another issue that's in the news and whether you have any thoughts on this. There is a legislator in Minnesota named Betty McCollum, and she's introduced a bill, Jack, that's called the Human Rights for Palestinian Children Living Under Israeli Military Occupation Act. And Representative McCollum claims that Israel is brutalizing Palestinian children. She's saying this in Congress, that Israelis are dragging children out of school, threatening them, torturing them. When you see that being said by a member of Congress, what's your instinctive response?
Well, we have one more anti-Semite, and that's one more too many in Congress. But look, we've had Omars and McCollums before. We'll have them again. It's not so much about a few individuals as much as we need to demand that they end this kind of hate speech. Individuals are going to come and go. My bigger concern is the leadership and where they get the pressure from, and make sure that they at least, are speaking out and being a voice of reason. I don't think we can stop Omars and McCollums in the future. We've had them before. There's King on the Republican Party side, who just got admonished and thrown off of committees. Republicans did that. So, there are people who are going to sneak into Congress, and they're going to say what they want to say, and as long as Americans and the leadership speaks out and disagrees with it, we'll all be okay. So it's not about McCollum. She's not a big factor at the moment, but the leadership has to take control of this.
Yeah, very, very well said. Jack, people say to me all the time, the problem is the college campus. BDS is rampant on college campus. SJP, the Students for Justice in Palestine, are wielding more and more power on certain key American campuses, colleges, and universities. And what people are worried about, this is what they say to me, Jack, is that the young people who are in college today, who are being influenced by an academia that is very pro-Palestinian and casts Israel as the bad guy. These young people are the leaders of the next generation. And when I say next, it's around the corner. And that, the Omars and Talibs and the Cortezes represent that generation. And that therefore there is a worry that given the strength of BDS on campus of late, there are going to be more and more people. It's not about their sneaking in. They will be more and more they will represent more and more of the political scene. Now, you've said some very optimistic and comforting things here. When you hear somebody say to you, they must say this to you, they say it to me, Jack, what's going to happen in the future with all the BDS that's going on among young people on college campuses? What's your response?
Well, look, I think we have to, develop methods by which we communicate better to the young people. We haven't done a good job of that in the community, over the last 50 years. This is not a new phenomenon. We have to get young people engaged, and we have to speak to them and make sure they get the facts. And if they get the facts, I think we can convince them. By definition, if you got into the university, you're smart enough to understand the facts. The facts are on our side when it comes to these things. But the community's got to galvanize. They have to, understand the importance of getting this message out, getting the facts out, supporting groups that counter BDS. And, it's up to us in the Jewish community. It's not about Jack Rosen or Mark. It's, the community as a whole has got to, understand that there's a danger ahead, as you point out, and that we have to come together and push back at that danger. And we can do that, but we have to support organizations. We have to get involved individually to make sure the facts go out. But we'll win if the facts get out there.
We will win if the facts get out. Boy, I think that's an absolute truism, and I appreciate your saying it. So as you look now, not at Congress, but as you look at American Jewish leadership, what, if anything, has disappointed you, and what, if anything, has, in some way been a sign of encouragement for you?
Well, look, we can't be disappointed by American Jewish leadership. I mean, here we are, helped create the State of Israel, made it one of the most powerful economic countries and military countries in the world. We've been, key influencers in Washington. So the community's done a remarkable job, better than anyone would have dreamed of. But if there's anything that I'm concerned about is the community, changing its methodology, changing its communication process in this fast developing technological age. I think in a way, religious institutions, religious platforms, including organizations, have not changed their methods and of how to impact, the younger generations. And I think we need to do something about that. We no longer live in a grassroots world. We no longer live in a world where, everybody's reaction to to the Jewish concerns is about the Holocaust. This younger generation is different, and my fear is that organizations are not looking to the future and developing strategies to do, a better job. But we can't complain about what they've done, and that's really what my idea of, my concern of not having a caucus, that we're not looking at the future. We're still playing, off of our past successes, and the future is rapidly changing. Social media styles of communicating nations are changing. So that's the fear I have for Jewish organizations.
I understand.
And we're trying to do that and change that. We understand we have to talk to younger people differently.
Okay.
And
Jack, you've been doing this your entire career, and people should understand you have a distinguished record not only of leadership, but you make enormous contributions to the Jewish world. And there's one person who you're among those whom we turn to, who are really Ohev Yisrael, and you stand up for Jewish values. And Jack, you've very often been courageous in your ability to take public stands. It's always wonderful to talk to you. I wish you every success. It's not because if you have success with the Jewish Caucus, American Jewry and then world Jewry will have a success. But I thank you so much for giving me some time. You be well, and we'll meet soon.
Okay. Well, thank you for all the good work you do and helping spread the positive message we have. So
thank you very much, Jack. You be well.
Right. See you soon. You
Bye-bye. Too. Jack Rosen, chairman of the American Jewish Congress, and he's pushing the idea of a Jewish caucus in Congress, and we'll see where that goes. As always, my thanks to our director, Dara Golub, editor John McDevitt, and to the producer of this edition of In the News, Carol Lilienthal. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please, indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, P.O. Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.